a few weeks back, I said, if you've got a plot outline, you've got something where we can get started on the sequel, this would be a perfect opportunity. We're all together. SG drops a telephone book stack of papers and says, here's issue 2, and there's 179 other issues. So she's a very prolific writer.
Hi, I'm Sam Stone here at Comic-Con 2024. Here this week, we're seeing the expansion of the Seven Galaxies universe with the new comic book series, Mythical Hunters. Everybody, introduce yourself for the viewers at home.
I'm SG Blaise, a sci-fi fantasy author of the award-winning Les Luminian saga and a brand new comic book. Thank you. I'm running out of hands here. And a brand new comic book we just debuted on Wednesday at the Comic-Con.
Hi, I'm Al Milgram, a longtime comic book artist, penciler, inker, editor, and unemployed, but retired really now. So that's it. I did a lot of work for Marvel and some work for DC. Co-created Firestorm, that character, and more recently he's come into prominence is the Spot, the character in the Spider-Verse movies. I created him.
I'm Scott Hanna. I'm currently working for Marvel and DC Comics and have been for the past 35 years. I'm working on Spider-Man, Amazing Spider-Man with John Romita Jr., Daredevil covers, and I was also actually able to do a painted cover, one of the variants that's premiering here at the show for Mythical Hunters.
I'm Mariano Nicieza, formerly from Marvel Comics, former editor and art director at Marvel. And I've spun off to create my own company, Apex Comics Group, and I am the publisher, and I also lent my meager talents to one of the variant covers.
SG, what is it about kind of Mythical Hunters and kind of, delving into these 7 very distinct, galaxies and worlds and kind of fleshing them out with your story?
Oh, yeah. The Mythical Hunters is about Siona and Aaron, who are destined to be legendary partners or dangerous adversaries as they chase fantastical creatures across the 7 galaxies. And 7 Galaxies is the world where the comic book and the book series is set to. And this book series is 1,000 years later. So what you see in the comic book, you're going to also encounter in book 6 and then later on. And the Les Luminian book series is about a 19-year-old rebel princess who must defeat the Dark God before he finds her, the Les Luminian.
In terms of that universe, what was it about expanding and bringing, SG and kind of exploring this within the comic book format and, believing in that vision?
I met a lot of the business folks behind the scenes some years back when I was working with William Shatner, transferring 2 of his novels, Man of War and Law of War, into a motion comic. So they knew that I had some experience in taking book properties and converting them to comic books. So it was a challenge, and it was a lot of fun to sort of universe build based on the original material from the books.
Al, like you were saying, you've gotten to play in some of the biggest comic book universes. What is it about science fiction, and especially science fiction worlds like this, that really set your imagination on fire?
I grew up, I read Ray Bradbury and Isaac Asimov and Arthur C. Clarke and a lot of the, real OG sci-fi creators. And it's just, I always found that stuff awe-inspiring and fascinating. It's here are the possibilities. Some you may have thought a little bit about. A lot of them you never would have conceived of. But it was just opened up whole other worlds and dimensions to you. And, what's more fun than that?
Scott, you've got to ink some of the most iconic characters and worlds, either working with Jim or any number of collaborators. When you get to do a project like this and do painted covers and that, what is it that, makes you love coming to that easel every day?
Every time you get new characters and new idea, it brings all the energy back. Like you said, I've done almost every major character for Marvel and DC. I have a game with my fans about what didn't I do, but whenever you're working on something new, you're like, okay, how do I bring a different approach to this? How do I, capture the world that these people belong in. I'm also, like Al, I grew up with classic sci-fi fantasy. You know, I actually started reading Conan in the comic books. Then I started reading everything else Robert E. Howard wrote, you know, and then I saw like all the Frazetta paintings and things like that. So all that stuff comes into play, you know, all the sci-fi stuff, all the fantasy stuff you read comes into play, but you're also doing your new take on it. So when you get that cover opportunity, you're just like the writer, you're trying to create the new world, right? Say, okay, we got characters, but what's the world they're in? What's the universe they're in? How do we start portraying that? And as an inker, I don't usually decide that stuff. My pencilers do, but as a painter or penciler, I get to decide those things, which is great, you know, and it's just, basically you're playing the whole game yourself this time. And it's just wonderful that Mariano gave me the opportunity to do this. I've done quite a few covers before, but this is, you know, one of the ones that I did everything from start to finish. And it was just fantastic. And I can't wait to find out more about these characters and play up the like, I didn't get to do the monster yet and things like that. You know, oh wait, I got to do that next. But yeah, it's just fun to have your take on brand new characters that are being introduced for the very, very first time.
Mariano, you've got quite the bullpen of, you know, everyone from the gang here, and of course Ariel Olivetti and everybody. Like, how is it kind of like organizing these collaborators and partners to come in and kind of lend their vision?
The good thing about being in the industry for decades is that you start to collect a lot of incriminating photographs. So it was very easy to pick up the phone and sort of strong-arm these guys.
I still deny it.
Well, SG, in terms of seeing, like, what I find fascinating about writing for comics is you're not just versus prose. You're basically like storyboarding at the same time, like figuring out paneling. You're seeing it come to life as opposed to just, you know, only coming visually in your mind's eye. Like, how is it seeing your work and the world that you've envisioned translate to this medium?
Oh, Sam, it's absolutely magical. I still can't believe that I have a book series and a comic book series out, although this is the first one out of 176. We're going to have a few issues. I always like to put that on the table. You have to. It's magical. It's surreal. This is a dream come true. I love storytelling, and it's just phenomenal to have this amazing comic book artist on this team, and I'm so honored and grateful to have this dream team together. Thank you.
Be honest, SG, you've only plotted through 166.
I didn't want to tell them that, Al. Remember, this is a secret.
Oh, I'm sorry.
They were kind of sharing their sci-fi picadillos with Bradbury and all that. I feel like with a story spanning 1,000 years, you know, you're seeing some. You had mentioned Asimov and everything. It feels like kind of like Foundation-esque. Like, what is some of your kind of like touchstones in terms of sci-fi?
I have to start with my childhood, if you allow me. Hollywood movies were largely forbidden when I grew up during the second half of the Soviet oppression. And when they premiered in the theater, you had one chance to watch it. And I was 1 year old when Star Wars came to Hungary. And my dad said that's unacceptable. And he smuggled these movies in, not to sell them, but to translate from English to Hungarian. Then he used his own voice to dub them, spent the whole week working on this so we could have movie nights on Saturday and Sunday. That's how I was introduced to sci-fi and fantasy. I got to watch the Star Wars series, Terminator, Indiana Jones, Back to the Future, and that just opened up my imagination. And when I started writing this series, which came to me in a dream, I knew that I wanted to have such a vast story. It would span 7 galaxies. So readers cannot get enough of it. They will deep dive into these worlds. They will love these characters, hundreds of these characters. And that was my inspiration for the book series and for the comic book.
I got time for one more, and it's always kind of the tricky one, but, you know, what else can you tease about the 7 Galaxies universe and, of course, the launch of Mythical Hunters?
Obviously, we're going to carry on with Mythical Hunters. Actually, SG, it's a funny story because I knew the interior artists, Walter Figueroa and Jessica Court. All of us were going to be at the booth. So a few weeks back, I said, if you've got a plot outline, you've got something where we can get started on the sequel, this would be a perfect opportunity. We're all together. SG drops a telephone book stack of papers and says, here's issue 2, and there's 179 other issues. So she's a very prolific writer. So there will be a future for all of this. We're going to expand these books. Obviously, you want to do arcs, four-issue story arcs, and then create trade paperbacks. So there will be a publishing plan.
Keep an eye out, again, for the expansion of the Seven Galaxies universe with Mythical Hunters. Out here at San Diego Comic-Con 2024, I'm Sam Stone. Y'all, thanks for taking the time to speak with me today.
Thank you.
Thank
Thanks,
you.
Sam.